Focus on Abilities is brought to you by Tier Memorial Hermann, redefining rehabilitation, removing barriers, re-enabling independence. In the ILRU Southwest ADA Center, promoting compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Welcome to Focus on Abilities, a program about issues affecting the lives of people with disabilities. I'm Lex Frieden. I'll be your host for today's program. I'm professor at the University of Texas Health Science Center at Houston, and I direct the Independent Living Research Utilization Program at Tier Memorial Hermann. Today we have a special show from you. We are filming at the Ed White Elementary School in HISD. It's in Houston, it's West Houston, near Gessner, and we have an amazing guest, somebody that I've known for a long time. We're going to talk about the ADA and some things that have transpired since 1990. Please stay tuned. This is Focus on Abilities. You're watching Focus on Abilities on HTV. I'm Lex Frieden. Today we have a special guest, Kay York, and I'm going to introduce Kay, but before I do, I want to ask you a question. The Americans with Disabilities Act covers all types of people with disabilities. Does that include people with mental illness? We'll answer the question before the end of today's program, so please bear with us and pay attention. Our guest today is Kay York. Kay works for HISD at the Ed White Elementary School. And Kay, welcome to Focus on Abilities.
It's good to be back after 24 years.
Well, Kay, the first time we met was about 24 years ago after the passage of the ADA. And I know at that time we in Houston were trying to change the environment, trying to make our community a participatory community, just like the vision of the ADA. I think you approached me and Daryl Simmons and suggested that we go and meet the mayor to talk about what could be done. Now, Mayor Lanier had been a great supporter of the ADA. In fact, he was one of the leading proponents among community leaders before the passage of the ADA, so we had a supporter. But your idea, I think, was to go and meet the mayor and say, what more can we do?
Right, and as you know, most people at the beginning of the passage of the ADA really considered it physical disabilities as opposed to a comprehensive law. And so I, at that time, was working in the nonprofit business, so to speak, of mental health. I worked for an organization called the Depressive and Manic Depressive Association, and it went on to become known as DBSA, Depression Bipolar Support Alliance, which is still in existence today. But I was very concerned that mental health issues were underrepresented. So in the past 2.5 decades, yes, we've come a long way both in physical and mental disabilities.
Well, from the standpoint of advocacy, when we worked on the ADA prior to its passage, I was in Washington much of the time and here in Houston right before the passage. The vision of the ADA was to include all people with disabilities. But in reality, people with mental illness, people with depression, manic depressive issues, were not really active in the community of people who were advocating for the bill. They didn't object to it, they supported it, but they did so quietly.
Right.
They weren't volunteering their own personal experience to be part of that advocacy. There were some exceptions, but by and large, as you point out, that community was not well represented. I think it was exceptional, the fact that you took the initiative in Houston to say, let's demonstrate the power of the breadth of this particular piece of legislation when we went to the mayor.
I think one of the reasons to address what you said about people in the mental health advocacy community is correct, that we weren't as organized at that point in history as people with physical disabilities had been. I mean, obviously parking slots were available, handicap parking as the old verbiage used to say, And so it wasn't until kind of the crisis of private psychiatric hospitals came about and people started, I'll tell you what the real movement was in the late 80s when people finally started recognizing that mental health issues were health issues, that the brain contributed to the person's problem, not because of poor parenting or they were just a bad kid. And so that whole community has evolved significantly since the very late 80s. I mean, when you think about it, Prozac wasn't even on the market until 1989.
That's a good point.
So
the initiative here in Houston was to ask the mayor to create a mayor's office on disability and a commission on disabilities to guide the city and the city council, the leadership and all the administration on matters that affected implementation of the Americans with Disabilities Act at that time. The mayor responded very positively, and furthermore, I'd like to remind people that the leadership in Houston consistently has been what one might call pro-disability, or at least disability understanding. And when we talk about our mayors, and Mayor Lanier in particular, he understood that disability did not mean just people with wheelchairs or people with physical impairments. He understood, and I believe from some personal experience, perhaps within his family, that mental illness actually was part of the disability broad definition. And people with mental illness could be perfectly normal in the sense that they conduct a job, have a life, have a family, and so on and so forth, as long as they can manage the physical and psychological impact of the issues they're dealing with.
Well, you know, my dad was a diabetic from a very early age, and so I know what it's like to be around sugar-free sodas and sugar-free desserts. And you know, the truth of the matter is there's really no difference between mental illness and diabetes. You know that you have to do certain things like take your medicine, because if you don't, then something extreme can happen. In the diabetic's case, go into a diabetic coma. And in the case of mental health issues, you might have an episode if you're bipolar, or you may have a major depression if you don't take your medication. So it's a manageable, treatable illness, just like any other medical illness. If you educate yourself, you take your meds, you follow your doctor's advice, and you surround yourself with a group of people who are willing to be your safety net.
Now, Kay, you speak from personal experience, and you have had a lot of experience in the last 24 years since we went to the mayor's office and secured an office on disability in our city. We're going to take a break now, but when we come back, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about some of your personal experience and how you've applied that to advocacy and how you might apply it to the work that you're doing now.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Good. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back with Kay York and more on Focus on Abilities.